The massive crystal dome of the Galactic Council chamber reflected the light of 12 different suns as representatives from across the galaxy gathered for an emergency session. Admiral Thane of the Altarian Empire slammed his scaled fist against the podium, his yellow eyes blazing with fury as he addressed the assembled delegates. "Enough is enough," Thane roared, his voice echoing through the crystalline walls. "The humans have pushed too far this time. They've expanded into 17 star systems in less than a century, while the rest of us took millennia to achieve such growth." Commander Rox of the Hegemony shifted in her liquid-filled chamber, her tentacles writhing with agitation. "Their mining operations are disrupting established trade routes that have existed for thousands of years. Every week we receive complaints from merchants who find human colonies where empty space should be. The Council had been watching Earth since first contact 30 years ago. What began as cautious diplomatic relations had transformed into growing alarm as humanity's rapid technological advancement and aggressive colonization became impossible to ignore. The humans seemed to possess an insatiable hunger for expansion that worried every established civilization. Elder Nix from the collective spoke with his mechanical voice devoid of emotion. "Their growth pattern is unprecedented. Our analysis shows they establish research stations that become military outposts within months. They sign territorial agreements, then find legal loopholes to expand beyond agreed boundaries." The holographic display above the chamber showed a three-dimensional map of human space. Red dots marked their original solar system, while blue dots showed their current holdings. The expansion was staggering. What had once been a single point of light now resembled a sprawling web of interconnected systems. "They show no respect for the established order," continued Rox, her voice bubbling through the translation device. "Every other species in this chamber learned to coexist within the framework we built together. Humanity seems determined to ignore those same rules." Admiral Thane's claws clicked against the podium as he gestured toward the display. "Look at their pattern. They don't just colonize habitable worlds. They terraform dead rocks, build stations in asteroid belts, and establish mining operations in systems we considered worthless. Their appetite for resources appears unlimited." The Galactic Council had governed peaceful coexistence for over 3,000 years. Member species followed established protocols for expansion, trade, and territorial claims. The system worked because everyone understood the rules and respected the boundaries. Everyone except humanity. "We have tried negotiations," Elder Nix continued, his robotic form shifting slightly. "They agree to territorial limits during meetings, then submit expansion requests that technically comply with agreements while violating their spirit. Their lawyers are more dangerous than their weapons." The assembled representatives murmured, "Agreement." Stories of human legal maneuvering had become legendary throughout the galaxy. They could find loopholes in contracts that had been ironclad for centuries, then exploit those gaps with ruthless efficiency. "The solution is simple," Thane declared, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. "We issue an ultimatum. Humanity must cease all expansion beyond their current borders and submit to Galactic Council oversight, or face the consequences." The vote was swift and unanimous. Every species represented in the chamber had grown tired of human expansion. The message would be transmitted immediately to Earth's capital ship, the Use Defiant, stationed at the edge of human space. Within hours, the ultimatum reached its destination. The communication was brief and the terms were clear: halt all expansion, submit to alien oversight, or face military action from the combined fleets of the Galactic Council. Deep in space, the UES Defiant received the transmission while conducting routine patrol operations. The ship's communication officer immediately forwarded the message to the command deck, where it would reach the appropriate authorities. The ultimatum contained specific demands that would effectively end human expansion. All current colonization efforts must stop immediately. Existing colonies beyond the originally agreed boundaries must be abandoned. Human military forces must withdraw to their home system. Most importantly, all future expansion must be approved by the Galactic Council, the message concluded with a warning that failure to comply within 30 days would result in military intervention. The combined fleets of 12 species would enforce the Council's decision through whatever means necessary. For the alien commanders, the ultimatum represented a reasonable solution to the human problem. They had tried diplomacy and negotiation, without success. Now they would use the only language they believed humans would understand: force, the Council's military. Analysis suggested that humanity possessed approximately 50 combat-capable vessels scattered across their territory. Even if every human ship responded to the threat, they would face overwhelming odds against the combined alien fleets. Admiral Thane felt confident as he reviewed the battle plans. The human fleet was small and dispersed, while the alien armada would bring over 200 ships to bear. The technological advantage also favored the Council since human advancement had been rapid but presumably shallow. They built too fast, Thane explained to his staff officers. Rapid expansion requires cutting corners. Their ships may be numerous, but they cannot match our centuries of refinement. Commander Rox agreed with the assessment. Our intelligence suggests they focus on quantity over quality. They produce ships quickly, but sacrifice durability and firepower. A single hegemony cruiser should match 3 human vessels. The alien commanders believed they understood humanity's weaknesses. The rapid expansion had spread their forces thin. Their technology was impressive but untested in real combat. Most importantly, they had never faced a coordinated response from multiple species working together. What the Galactic Council didn't know was that Earth had been preparing for this possibility since the day they first encountered alien civilizations. The humans had studied every species in the Council, analyzed their technologies, and developed countermeasures for their weapons. The reveal that was about to unfold would change everything the aliens thought they knew about human capabilities. The ultimatum had been delivered, but the response they received would be unlike anything they could imagine. Deep in classified human facilities, engineers were putting finishing touches on technologies that would rewrite the rules of galactic warfare. The Council wanted to see humanity's true strength, and they were about to get their wish in ways they never expected. 3 weeks after the ultimatum was delivered, the largest armada in galactic history assembled at the edge of human space. 237 ships from 12 different species formed a massive blockade that stretched across multiple star systems. The combined firepower of the fleet was capable of reducing entire planets to molten slag within hours. The alien vessels represented the finest military technology each species had developed over millennia. Alterian battleships, with their heavy armor and plasma cannons, hegemony cruisers equipped with quantum torpedoes and adaptive shields, collective dreadnoughts bristling with automated defense systems and drone swarms. Together, they formed an unstoppable force that had never been assembled before. Admiral Thane surveyed the fleet from his flagship, the Sovereignty, feeling deep satisfaction as he watched the tactical display. The human defensive line appeared pathetically small in comparison. Only 43 ships were scattered across their positions, and most appeared to be converted civilian vessels rather than proper warships. Pathetic, Thane muttered as he studied the enemy formation. They couldn't even muster 50 ships to defend their entire territory. His tactical officer, a young Alterian named Crix, nodded agreement. Our intelligence was accurate, sir. They expanded too quickly and spread their forces too thin. Even if they had better ships, the numbers are overwhelming. The human fleet maintained defensive positions around key strategic points, but their formation looked desperate rather than confident. Small groups of ships clustered around space stations and important colonies while leaving vast areas of space completely undefended. Sir, reported the communications officer, we're receiving multiple surrender requests from outer human colonies. They're requesting safe passage to evacuate civilian populations. Thane's scaled lips curved into what might have been a smile. Denied. They had 30 days to comply with our ultimatum. Now they face the consequences of their arrogance. From Her position aboard the hegemony vessel Depth Charge, Commander Rox observed the human positions with professional interest. Her species had evolved from deep-sea creatures and understood the importance of patience in warfare. The humans appeared to be preparing for a last stand rather than a strategic withdrawal. Curious, she bubbled through her translation device. They're not even trying to escape. Either they're incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. Elder Nix monitored the situation from his collective ship. The Unity, his mechanical mind processed thousands of variables simultaneously, calculating odds and predicting outcomes. Every analysis reached the same conclusion: human defeat was inevitable. Resistance is futile, he announced to his drone subordinates. The humans lack sufficient resources to mount an effective defense. Their emotional attachment to territory prevents rational strategic thinking. The alien commanders opened a joint communication channel to the human fleet. They wanted to offer one final opportunity for surrender before beginning the attack. The face that appeared on their screens belonged to a middle-aged human with gray hair and calm eyes. "I am Captain Reed of the UES Defiant," the human said. Without preamble, "I assume you're here to enforce the Council's ultimatum." Admiral Thane leaned forward in his command chair. "Captain Reed, you have one final opportunity to surrender. Order your ships to stand down and prepare for Galactic Council inspection. We will allow civilian evacuations if you comply immediately." Reed's expression remained unchanged. "Admiral, I'm afraid we'll have to decline your generous offer. Humanity will defend its sovereignty regardless of the odds." The alien commanders exchanged glances. They had expected last-minute negotiations or desperate pleas for mercy. Instead, the human captain seemed almost relaxed, as if facing impossible. Odds was just another routine day. Commander Rox's tentacles twitched with confusion. "Captain, your 43 ships against our 237. Your bravery is admirable, but this is suicide. Your people will be slaughtered." Reed's eyebrows rose slightly and something that might have been amusement flickered across his features. 43 ships? Who told you we only had 43 ships? The question hung in the air like a physical presence. The alien commanders checked their sensors and tactical displays, but the readings remained consistent. They could clearly see every human vessel in their defensive formation. "Our sensors are quite advanced," Elder Nix replied with mechanical precision. "We detect exactly 43 combat vessels in your fleet. Deception will not change the mathematical reality of your situation." Reed smiled, and for the first time, the alien commanders felt a flicker of unease. There was something unsettling about the humans' confidence in the face of overwhelming odds. "Your sensors are indeed advanced," Reed agreed. "But they're designed to detect the kind of technology you understand. You might want to run a deep spectrum analysis." Before anyone could respond, the space around the human fleet began to shimmer. The very fabric of reality seemed to ripple and bend, creating visual distortions that made the alien sensors scream warnings. Warning klaxons blared throughout the alien fleet as their tactical systems registered impossible readings. The space that had appeared empty moments before now pulsed with energy signatures that defied conventional physics. "Impossible," whispered Admiral Thane, his voice barely audible above the chaos erupting on his bridge. "Our sensors detected nothing." "How did they—" The shimmering intensified, and suddenly the tactical displays on every alien ship began registering new contacts. Where once there had been 43 human vessels, now there were over 300. They had appeared from nowhere, materializing out of what seemed to be empty space. "Cloaking technology," Reed explained calmly, his voice cutting through the panic in the alien command centers. "We've been working on it for quite some time. Did you really think we'd show you our full hand during peacetime?" The alien fleet hung in stunned silence as the true scope of the human defensive force became apparent. The ships that had just decloaked were unlike anything in their databases. Sleek, angular designs that seemed to absorb sensor sweeps rather than reflect them. Analysis? Admiral Thane barked at his science officer, though his usual commanding tone had lost much of its authority. "Unknown composition, sir? The hull materials don't match any known alloys. The energy signatures are completely different from anything we've encountered, and the power outputs. The officer paused, checking his readings again. Sir, they're generating 3 times the energy of our best reactors. The revelation sent shockwaves through the alien command structure. Everything they thought they knew about human capabilities had been wrong. The intelligence reports, the strategic assessments, the confident predictions of easy victory, all of it had been based on incomplete information. Commander Rox's tentacles writhed with agitation as she processed the implications. If they can hide an entire fleet from our sensors, what else haven't they shown us? The question would be answered sooner than she expected. Panic spread through the alien command ships as their most advanced sensors struggled to make sense of what they were witnessing. The human vessels that had materialized from nowhere defied every known principle of starship design. Their hulls absorbed electromagnetic radiation instead of reflecting it, making them appear as dark voids against the star-filled background. The science officer aboard the Sovereignty worked frantically at his console, running analysis after analysis on the mysterious human ships. Admiral, the composition readings are impossible. The hull materials register as solid matter, but they're absorbing energy across the entire spectrum. It's like they're made of crystallized shadow. Admiral Thane's claws dug into his command chair as he watched the tactical display update with increasingly disturbing information. What about their power cores? Can we at least identify their energy source? That's the most troubling part, sir. The power signatures don't match any known reactor design. They're generating massive amounts of energy, but we can't determine how. It's as if they're tapping into fundamental forces we don't understand. The implications were staggering. Every spacefaring civilization in the galaxy had followed similar technological paths. Fusion reactors provided power, metal alloys formed hulls, and energy weapons delivered destruction. The humans appeared to have abandoned those conventional approaches entirely. Commander Rox observed the situation from her liquid-filled chamber, her tentacles twitching with nervous energy. Their formation is changing. Look at how they're moving. The human fleet had begun to spread out, but their ships were accelerating at impossible rates. Vessels that should have required hours to reach their positions were completing complex maneuvers in minutes. Helm matched their acceleration, Thane ordered, but his pilot shook his head immediately. Impossible, sir. They're achieving 0.75 light speed in normal space without jump drives. Our engines can't produce that kind of thrust without entering hyperspace. The alien commanders watched in growing horror as the human ships moved with casual indifference to the laws of physics they had believed were absolute. Faster than light travel within normal space was considered impossible by every species in the galaxy. Captain Reed's voice crackled over the communication channel, his tone still maddeningly calm. Quantum manipulation drives. We figured out how to locally alter space-time curvature. Makes traditional propulsion look rather primitive, doesn't it? Elder Nix's mechanical form shifted as he processed this information. The energy requirements for space-time manipulation would be astronomical. No known reactor design could provide sufficient power. Known to you, Reed replied. We've been developing zero-point energy extraction for the past 15 years. Turns out the vacuum of space contains more power than most civilizations use in a century. The revelation hit the alien fleet like a physical blow. Zero-point energy was theoretical physics that every species had studied, but none had successfully harnessed. If humans had mastered it, their technological advantage was beyond calculation. Sir, the tactical officer called out, his voice tight. With fear, their weapons are powering up. Energy readings are off the charts. The human ships began to reveal their armament systems, and what the aliens saw defied every principle of weapons design they understood. Instead of traditional energy, cannons or missile launchers, the human vessels bristled with devices that pulsed with unknown forms of energy. What are we looking at? Thane demanded, but his science officer could only shake his head in confusion. Unknown, sir. The energy patterns don't match any weapon system in our databases. They're generating fields that our instruments can't properly Analyze, Reed's explanation came without being asked. Particle beam weapons, gravity manipulators, and quantum disruption arrays. We found that traditional energy weapons were inefficient against advanced shielding systems, so we developed alternatives. The human fleet demonstrated their technological superiority with casual ease. Ships that could phase through solid matter, weapons that could target specific molecular structures, and shields that didn't just deflect energy but absorbed it and converted it to power. Impossible, Commander Rox whispered, her voice barely audible through the translation device. Our shields are rated to withstand any known energy weapon. How can they simply absorb everything? Adaptive metamaterials, Reed explained. The shield generators analyze incoming energy and reconfigure their molecular structure to absorb and redirect it. Energy weapons actually make our ships stronger. The alien commanders realized they were witnessing technology that was decades, or possibly centuries ahead of their own. Every advantage they had counted on was meaningless against human innovations that seemed to break fundamental laws of physics. How? Admiral Thane finally managed to ask, his voice cracking with the strain of accepting the impossible. How did you advance so far beyond the rest of us? Reed's expression grew serious for the first time since the confrontation began. Because we had to. You've been watching us for 30 years, but did you ever wonder why we expanded so quickly? Why we seemed so desperate to claim new territories? The alien commanders exchanged glances through their communication links. They had assumed human expansion was driven by simple greed and ambition, the same motivations that had driven their own species in earlier eras. We detected something, Reed continued, his voice taking on a grave tone that made the alien commanders lean forward despite themselves. Something that makes your entire Galactic Council look like children playing with toys. The words hung in the vacuum of space like a physical presence. The aliens had come to contain humanity, expecting to face a primitive species that had grown too quickly for their own good. Instead, they were confronting a civilization that had advanced beyond their understanding. Explain, Thane demanded. Though his voice lacked any trace of its earlier authority, Reed's response would change. Everything the aliens thought they knew about the galaxy and their place in it. The human fleet maintained their positions, weapons, charged and ready, but their formation had shifted subtly. What had appeared to be an aggressive stance now looked distinctly defensive. We've been preparing for a threat that you can't even imagine, Reed said quietly. Something that makes this entire confrontation seem petty and meaningless. The alien commanders stared at their displays, suddenly realizing that they might have made a terrible mistake. The humans hadn't been expanding to threaten the galaxy. They had been preparing to defend it. The largest vessel in the human fleet began to move forward, its massive bulk dwarfing even the alien flagship. The ship was unlike anything the galactic databases contained, a sleek, black behemoth that seemed to bend light around its hull. Energy readings from its core exceeded the measurement capabilities of alien sensors. That's the UES Prometheus, Captain Reed announced, his voice carrying a note of pride. Our newest class of warship. Would you like a demonstration of its capabilities? Admiral Thane felt his blood turn cold as he watched the enormous vessel position itself near a dense asteroid field. The ship's main weapon began to charge, and the energy readings climbing beyond anything his instruments could properly measure. Sir, his tactical officer called out, his voice barely controlled panic, the power spike is beyond our sensor range. Whatever they're charging, it's drawing more energy than our entire fleet combined. The Prometheus aligned itself with the largest asteroid in the field, a massive chunk of rock and metal that measured nearly 50 kilometers across. The asteroid was composed of dense metallic ore that would have required days of concentrated bombardment to destroy using conventional weapons. Energy discharge imminent, Reed announced calmly. You might want to shield your sensors. Before the alien commanders could respond, the Prometheus fired. A beam of impossible energy lanced out from the ship's main weapon, striking the asteroid. Dead center. The result was not an explosion or vaporization as every military manual would have predicted. The asteroid simply vanished. One moment it existed as a solid mass of rock and metal, the next it was gone, leaving only empty space and confused sensor readings. No debris, no energy discharge, no trace that it had ever existed. "Impossible," Elder Nix whispered, his mechanical voice carrying a note of something that might have been fear. "Matter cannot simply cease to exist. It violates fundamental conservation laws." Reed's explanation came with casual scientific precision. "Matter displacement cannon. We don't destroy targets, we relocate them to another dimension." "The energy requirements are enormous, but the results are quite effective." The alien fleet hung in stunned silence as the implications sank in. Every military doctrine they knew was based on the assumption that matter could be destroyed or transformed, but never simply removed from existence entirely. "These strategic implications... Commander Rox began, but her voice trailed off as she contemplated the possibilities. If humans could remove enemy ships from reality itself, traditional warfare became meaningless. "Indeed," Reed agreed, "though we prefer not to use such methods on sentient beings. We're not monsters, despite what your council might think." But the demonstration was far from over. The human fleet began to display additional capabilities that challenged everything the aliens thought they knew about the limitations of technology and physics. A squadron of human fighters suddenly became translucent, passing through solid asteroids as if they were made of empty space. The fighters emerged on the other side completely unharmed, their molecular structure having somehow phased through solid matter. "Quantum phasing," Reed explained as the alien commanders watched in fascination and horror. "We can temporarily shift our ships into a parallel quantum state, allowing them to occupy the same space as other objects without interaction." The tactical advantages were staggering. Shields and armor became useless against weapons that could simply phase through them. Defensive barriers could be bypassed entirely. The fundamental concepts of protection and cover had been rendered obsolete. Another group of human vessels demonstrated weapons that seemed to target specific elements within enemy ships. They fired precisely controlled beams at a derelict alien vessel that had been abandoned years earlier. Instead of destroying the ship, the weapons selectively removed only the titanium components from its hull. "Molecular disruption arrays," Reed continued his casual explanation. "We can target specific atomic structures while leaving everything else intact. Useful for disabling ships without harming their crews." Admiral Thane realized with growing horror that his fleet's advanced armor and shielding were meaningless against weapons that could simply ignore them. The humans had developed countermeasures for every defensive system the galaxy possessed. "Our shields?" he managed to ask. "Can they stop these weapons?" "Your shields are quite impressive," Reed replied diplomatically. "But they're designed to deflect energy and absorb impact. They can't protect against weapons that target matter at the atomic level." The demonstration continued with increasingly impossible displays of technology. Human ships that could generate artificial gravity wells, bending space around them to deflect incoming fire. Weapons that could create temporary black holes, consuming anything within their event horizon. Defensive systems that didn't just absorb energy but converted it into additional power for their own systems. "How many of these impossible weapons do you possess?" Commander Rox asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Enough," Reed replied simply. "We've been developing new technologies for 30 years, preparing for a threat that requires capabilities beyond anything the galaxy has seen." The human fleet began to move in perfect coordination despite their incredible speeds and impossible maneuvers. Formation patterns that should have taken hours to execute were completed in minutes, with ships phasing through each other and reality itself to achieve optimal positioning. "Your coordination," Elder Nix observed. "No communication lag should allow such precision at these distances." "Quantum entanglement communication," Reed explained. "Instantaneous coordination across any distance. We've been using it for fleet operations for over a decade." The alien commanders realized they were witnessing the emergence of a Type II civilization, a species that had transcended the normal limitations of physics and technology. Everything they had believed about the limits of scientific advancement had been proven wrong. Why? Admiral Thane finally asked, his voice carrying the weight of defeat. Why develop such overwhelming capabilities? What could require this level of preparation? Reed's expression grew grim as he prepared to reveal the truth that would change everything the aliens thought they knew about their place in the universe. The human fleet maintained their positions, weapons charged and ready, but their formation had shifted to something unmistakably defensive. Because 47 years ago, our deep space monitoring stations detected something approaching from outside the galaxy, Reed said quietly, something that makes our entire conflict seem like a children's game. The alien commanders leaned forward as Reed prepared to explain the real reason for humanity's rapid advancement and desperate expansion. The truth would be more terrifying than anything they had imagined possible. The command chambers of the alien fleet fell into absolute silence as Captain Reed's words echoed through the communication channels. The implications were staggering, and every alien commander felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold vacuum of space surrounding their vessels. 47 years ago, Reed continued, his voice carrying the weight of terrible knowledge, our deep space monitoring stations detected energy signatures moving between galaxies. Not ships as we understand them, but something else entirely. Something vast and purposeful. The main display flickered to life, showing sensor data that made the alien commander's blood run cold. The readings depicted objects the size of small planets, moving at impossible speeds through the void between galaxies. Behind them stretched trails of destruction that told a story of systematic annihilation. We call them the Devourers, Reed explained, his casual tone replaced by grim determination. They consume entire star systems, converting matter into energy for their journey through the cosmic void. Our analysis suggests they've already destroyed 7 complete galaxies. Admiral Thane stared at the display in horror, his scaled features reflecting the blue glow of the devastating images. 7 galaxies, billions of star systems, trillions of lives. And they're heading directly toward us, Reed confirmed. Our calculations indicate they'll reach the outer edges of our galaxy within 18 months. Maybe less if they encounter resistance and decide to accelerate their timeline. The alien commanders exchanged glances through their communication links, each seeing the same realization dawning in their colleagues' eyes. The petty territorial disputes and expansion concerns that have brought them here seem meaningless in the face of complete galactic extinction, Elder. Nix's mechanical voice carried an unusual note of uncertainty. If such a threat existed, why? Didn't you inform the Council? Surely cooperation would have been preferable to this deception. Reed's expression hardened slightly. Because you would have done exactly what you're doing now. You'd have tried to control us, limit our development, and force us to work within your established parameters. We couldn't afford bureaucracy when facing the end of everything we know. The truth hit the alien commanders like a physical blow. While they had been concerned about human expansion and territorial violations, humanity had been desperately preparing to defend the entire galaxy from annihilation. Your expansion, Commander Rox realized, her voice bubbling with understanding. You weren't claiming territory for conquest, you were building a defensive network. Every colony is a fortress, Reed confirmed. Every mining station is a weapons platform. Every research facility is developing new ways to fight an enemy that defies conventional understanding. We've been turning our entire sphere of influence into one massive military installation. The human fleet's formation suddenly made perfect sense. What had appeared to be aggressive positioning was actually a defensive perimeter designed to protect not just human space but the entire galaxy beyond it. The advanced scouts arrived 6 months ago, Reed continued. Small probe-like entities that precede the main force. We've been tracking them, studying their capabilities, and developing countermeasures. What we've learned is terrifying. The display showed new images of the advanced scouts. They appeared as geometric shapes that shifted and changed constantly, their forms defying conventional physics. They moved through space by warping reality around them, leaving distortions that lingered long after they passed. They're not machines as we understand them, Reed explained. They're something else entirely. Constructs of pure energy that can manipulate matter at the fundamental level. Our conventional weapons are useless against them. Admiral Thane felt the weight of command settling on his shoulders like a crushing burden. How do we fight such things? That's what we've been trying to figure out, Reed replied. The technologies you've seen today are the result of 30 years of desperate research. We've had to rewrite physics textbooks and abandon everything we thought we knew about the universe. The alien commanders began to understand the scope of humanity's preparation. The impossible technologies they had witnessed weren't developed for conquest or territorial expansion. They were weapons of desperation created by a species that had seen the end of everything and refused to accept it. We need to work together, Reed continued, his voice carrying new urgency. Your fleets, our technology, combined with everything we've learned about the Devourers. It's the only chance any of us have for survival. The transformation in the alien commanders was immediate and profound. The ultimatum they had delivered seemed petty and meaningless in the face of galactic extinction. Their territorial concerns evaporated in the face of a threat that would consume everything they had ever known. What do you need? Admiral Thane asked, his voice stripped of its earlier authority and replaced by desperate hope. Everything, Reed replied without hesitation. Every ship, every resource, every brilliant mind in the galaxy. We need to combine our technologies and knowledge to create weapons that can actually damage these entities. Commander Rox's tentacles writhed with agitation as she processed the implications. Our defensive strategies, our military doctrines, everything we know about warfare will be useless. Worse than useless, Reed agreed. The Devourers learn from every encounter. They adapt to whatever weapons we use against them. We need to constantly innovate, constantly surprise them with new approaches. The two fleets began to merge into a single formation, their previous hostility replaced by desperate cooperation. Alien vessels that had come to enforce an ultimatum now found themselves joining humanity's last stand against extinction. The real war is about to begin, Reed announced as the combined fleet took shape around them. Everything we've shown you today is just the beginning. We're going to need to transcend every limitation of physics and technology if we want to survive. Elder Nix's mechanical form shifted as he processed tactical data. The coordination required for such a defense will be unprecedented. Our species have never worked together on this scale. Then we'll have to learn quickly, Reed replied. Because the alternative is the end of everything we've ever known or loved. The alien commanders looked at their displays, seeing the human fleet in an entirely new light. These weren't conquerors or aggressors threatening the established order. They were the galaxy's first and last line of defense against an enemy that sought to consume everything. As the combined fleet prepared for the greatest challenge in galactic history. The commanders realized that humanity's rapid expansion and technological advancement hadn't been a threat to civilization. It had been its salvation. The Devourers were coming. But for the first time in 47 years, the galaxy would face them united. The Warship reveal had been just the beginning of humanity's preparations. The true test of their impossible technologies was yet to come.